Don't you love it? Get all my buttons pushed here. Did I get it on? Remember when the preacher just walked up and started yelling, he didn't have to worry about all that? One of my favorite songs, and some of you are going to find this hard to believe, is sung by a very famous singer, Kermit the Frog. Probably most of you have heard it, but I always liked that song, and I've heard several renditions of it since then that were done by real live singers, but every time I hear it, all I can hear is Kermit the Frog singing it. Why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? And the rainbow is a fascinating occurrence in the sky, and we're going to talk about it a little this morning. But I was thinking the other day, you know, it's kind of funny. One of the most beautiful things in the world, in part, comes to us because of man's sin. If it weren't for man being so sinful, we'd probably never have the rainbow. I'm not trying to justify sin, and you got to stay with me to the whole sermon because it's in the last and the conclusion that I make some sense to that statement. But why sin? Couldn't have God created this earth and gotten along without that sin thing? There's a number of explanations that I believe are, well, correct or all incomplete. But this morning I want to expound on one of my favorite aspects of the question of why sin, and it too is incomplete in and of itself, but I think it's an important part of understanding the whole, and that part is the covenant relationship that God established with mankind. It becomes quite well known by those who listen to my preaching or teaching after a little while to know that if you don't know the answer to a question in class, just say covenant, and you're probably going to be right 75% of the time. In fact, the other day I asked Deb a question and it had nothing to do with the Bible, and she looked at me and said, covenant? I think she was being facetious, but I'm not real sure. She may have known the answer and didn't want to give it to me, for all I know. But, you know, I think it's important because we talked about it last week when we talked about Adam and Eve, and the first covenant relationship that's established in Scripture in the Adamic covenant, when God says to them, and the offspring of woman will crush the serpent's head. Now, man has been looking for that. But if you know the timeline of the biblical story, you know that Adam and Eve weren't too good of parents. Obviously, they did not share the story as well as they should have. You would think, maybe we're embarrassed because of the foreclosure on the garden, I don't know. But you would think that they would have shared how wonderful it was in the garden, walking with God in the cool of the evening, and would have shared that promise that one day we're going to get to go back. But they didn't do too good a job of it because it's not long before we hear the words that the whole world had become wicked. The whole world had become so wicked, in fact, that God was going to wipe it out. The Scriptures say, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So we have Noah, who Peter in 2 Peter describes a preacher of righteousness. I want to read from 2 Peter, the 2nd chapter, 4th through the 9th verse. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. If this is so, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to hold the unrighteous for punishment